Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss how, although the government are doing their best to look like they are opposing Russian aggression, and in military terms they are, Boris Johnson and his Conservatives remain mired in dodgy finances from the Kremlin as a new scandal emerges linking Russian money to the Conservatives' 2019 general election campaign, and Boris Johnson refuses to comply with Parliament by releasing information on the security advice he was given against making a Russian oligarch a peer of the realm. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So the government would like us to focus on our military commitments to Europe. Now, I've said it before and I'll say it again. The Defence Secretary, Ben Wallace, has been exemplary in this regard, and I have seen nobody raise any credible objections to the way we have conducted ourselves in support of European allies in military terms against Russian aggression. The latest being, of course, our support for Sweden and Finland in visits by the Prime Minister. But behind the scenes, there is the ugliness of Russian oligarchs with direct links with the Kremlin infiltrating our politics. A parliamentary select committee ran an investigation. Their report concluded that the government had specifically told our intelligence services not to go looking into evidence of Russian interference in our politics so that they could then tell journalists we have found no evidence of Russian interference in our politics. We nearly never got to find out about it. Boris Johnson suppressed the publication of that report. In fact, we only have it now, albeit in redacted form, because Boris Johnson was double-crossed by a Tory MP who didn't want to sell his country out to the Russians. And this is something worth remembering as well as I talk about the latest scandals. The Conservative Party as a whole is badly compromised by Russian interference. Boris Johnson personally deeply compromised, I suspect. But not all Conservative MPs support this takeover of our country or their party. They don't generally do enough to stop it. You know, they put party ahead of country, as Theresa May did when she warned about Russian interference, but she was still the Prime Minister who ordered intelligence services to keep the noses out. But they still don't like it. One of two scandals relating to the Kremlin's control of the Conservative Party this week was the news that they took a huge donation from someone who funneled the money directly from Russia. This, I think, was first reported in the New York Times this week. Then we see a report that the money was flagged by Barclays Bank as coming directly from a Russian account. Barclays allegedly flagged it as both a money laundering risk and an illegal campaign contribution, because we still had laws on the restriction on foreign money in UK political campaigns in 2019. And if this is even remotely true, I don't think we can overstate just how serious this is. Never mind the millions of pounds that have been paid by Russian oligarchs to the Conservative Party and to individual Conservative MPs, including many senior members of the government. This would mean that the Russian president, directly or indirectly, funded the Conservatives' 2019 general election win. The one where the resulting majority government then enacted a series of policies that have been Russian foreign policy for decades, namely splitting the UK off politically from the rest of Europe. No matter how well we're doing in countering Putin with military support for countries around Russia, that doesn't excuse the government's treachery of their own people in favour of an unfriendly foreign power who had already murdered people on our soil. Now, do you want to hear the really spicy bit? Several years ago, before the last general election, Labour MP Stephen Kinnock wrote to the then Conservative Party chair, now Northern Ireland Secretary, Brandon Lewis. He asked about the then Conservative Party treasurer, a Mr. Shelag, who had donated a lot of money to the party. And it wasn't immediately obvious how he could afford to do so. He also appeared to have links with some dodgy Russian characters with noteworthy business interests in Russia. Mr. Kinnock asked if there shouldn't be an investigation into this, to which Brandon Lewis told him to mind his own business. 3 years later, and we see a report that the aforementioned party treasurer, Mr. Shelag, has been referred to the National Crime Agency with evidence of potential money laundering and breaching election funding laws. Aren't we glad the government have now taken political control of the Electoral Commission? They would likely have investigated something like this if it weren't now up to the Conservatives what they do and do not investigate. I've got a little bit of an inkling they may not investigate this. But if the National Crime Agency may be investigating it, it could still be tricky for Boris Johnson. In fact, any Tory who has been involved in this. And that was just one scandal to emerge this week, showing the way the Conservative Party is still compromised by the Kremlin. The other was in the non-release of documents related to the security advice that Boris Johnson received about the elevation of Evgeny Lebedev, son of KGB officer, someone who derives his own wealth from Kremlin patronage and a close friend of Boris Johnson. The story of his peerage is that the security services appeared to advise against it on national security grounds. Boris Johnson told them he wanted different advice. All of a sudden, the national security concerns were airbrushed out. With the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the issue came back into the spotlight. A couple of months ago, Labour put a motion to Parliament that the government should release documents concerning the security advice on Lebedev's peerage to the Intelligence and Security Committee. Boris Johnson was saying, no, there were no concerns. It was all fine. Everything was done fine. And so Labour have said, well, let's have a look at it then. Let's have a look at the advice you were given. You know, and actually, Labour weren't even asking to see the advice. They were asking the Intelligence and Security Committee to see the advice. You know, and it looked like Tory rebels were prepared to vote against the government on this. So they let it pass unchallenged. There was no objection to it, just went through on the nod. This week, the government released some documents in order to comply with that parliamentary order. But they didn't. They handed over a bunch of papers that have got nothing to do with the request at all. It's a blatant two fingers up to Parliament. And the government can't cite national security concerns over the release of these documents. That, I'm sure, would apply if we were talking about making them publicly available. But Parliament didn't order the government to make them publicly available, just to the Intelligence and Security Committee of cross-party MPs. They already review highly sensitive documents of this type. They are all subject to the Official Secrets Act. There is no justification for denying them information that Parliament has specifically ordered be handed over. This is a direct challenge to Parliament's authority. But is it also evidence that Boris Johnson, despite what he says, was told by our intelligence services that Lebedev should not be elevated due to concerns over national security? That Johnson ignored this and appointed Lebedev to the Lords anyway? That our Prime Minister risked national security in order to do a friend a favour? And what sort of favour? And what hold does Lebedev have over our Prime Minister? Now, in terms of what happens now, Labour will obviously have to pursue this. The documents, as ordered, were not handed over. This is contempt of Parliament territory. What should happen here is there should now be a vote by Parliament to find Boris Johnson in contempt of Parliament and to order the direct release of the documents. This happened with Theresa May in 2019 when she refused to hand over the Operation Yellowhammer report into the impact of a no-deal Brexit. Of course, back then, the Conservatives did not have a majority and were perfectly happy to get rid of Theresa May shortly after. It may well be that Tory MPs are not at the moment up for a vote to find Johnson in contempt of Parliament. I don't know. Labour MPs will have to get a feel for what they can get support for here by talking with Tory MPs very much off the record. But there at least needs to be a vote to directly order the release of the documents requested. Parliament cannot be seen here to be subservient to the government. Constitutionally, Parliament is supreme, not the government. The government acts as an agent of Parliament. If Parliament folds on this, then our constitution is basically shot. So yes, despite the headlines about the government doing this, doing that and the other, in support of Ukraine and other European countries that Russia is threatening, we have to note we were very slow to apply economic sanctions, weren't we? We gave the Russian oligarchs a good long time to shift their assets out of the country before we closed in on them. And even then, we only really made an example of a few notables like Roman Abramovich to stop people being suspicious. But they've taken a lot of money from these people over the years. A large part of their last general election campaign was funded with money transferred directly, according to these reports, from a Russian bank under circumstances so dodgy that it has been referred to criminal investigators. And the Conservatives are covering up investigations into Russian interference in our politics as well. These are the actions of traitors, not of people that have got nothing to hide. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. Maybe even click on the join button if you'd be interested in membership. And until next time, I'll see you later.